All right, welcome back. I call this next section the preliminary smell test. Because what this section is going to do, it's going to teach you how to identify potential opportunities without spending too much time or really doing too much work. The first thing that happens is the homeowner goes into default. That's not something we're generally going to be made aware of. There's no public record filing. We're not going to have access to people's credit reports. And they're certainly not going to be standing on the corner of the street yelling out, "I'm 4 months behind on my mortgage payment." So the homeowner in default is going to take us by surprise when it happens. But the bank knows. The bank knows that the borrower is in default. And soon after 60 days, they're going to bring in the special loss mitigation department. These employees of the lender are a little more educated and more experienced with regard to dealing with homeowners having financial problems. They will attempt, they being the bank's employees, attempt to get the homeowner on the phone, which sometimes is a difficult task because if you're behind and there's no good news you can give your lender and you can't make a promise to pay, a lot of people feel like it's a waste of time to even answer the phone because all you're going to do is make yourself feel worse. But that's a story for another day. But the loss mitigation department will have to speak to your borrower, your homeowner, before you can get approved for a short sale. Because loss mitigation is the first thing that the bank wants to try, because the bank will take the slightest haircuts on loss mitigation. They might lose a little bit of interest, they might lose a little bit of fees for delinquency and stuff, but overall they're going to add it all onto the back end anyways. So this is the lender, this is their option of choice, is loss mitigation. And your borrower either has to have a foreclosure filed against them, or they have to have been denied access into the loss mitigation program at their lender. Once they're denied, or if they don't ever call the bank back, there's going to be a foreclosure action filed, and that's going to be a public record. And I'm going to read a little bit right out of the text. Once the foreclosure is filed, there will be some sort of public notice or filing that makes the public aware of the action. In Florida, for example, the document is recorded in the public records, the official public records, and is known as a lis pendens, which just means litigation pending. Also known as an LP for short. Investors should be searching for foreclosure notices every day, or at least every other day, depending upon the size of your staff and foreclosure activity in your state. Incidentally, if you plan to work short sales in a non-judicial state, this material and the ideas herein will still work very well. You just have to read a little deeper into the text in order to apply the meanings and the terminology in your state. On top of that, if you're in a non-judicial state, your timelines are going to be a lot shorter. So you're going to have a lot less time to get things done. So the majority of my training, at least in this course, is applicable to judicial states, Florida being my favorite since I'm the most familiar with it. And in Florida, we have notice of foreclosures being filed, and those are known as an LP. So once the LP is shown up in the public records, it's time for the investor to go to work. So an investor running a short sale business, their typical morning consists of looking at all the LPs that showed up of record yesterday. Write down the property address. You have the case number. You may have to look into the clerk's website. Search by case number. Take a look at the complaint, which is a public record. You can access it. And on page 1 or page 2 of the complaint, it depends on the attorney that's writing the complaint, there'll be the amount of money that's owed to the bank listed within the complaint. Now, this number is going to change. The number is going to go up considerably, sometimes as high as 50%, depending upon the original amount and the amount of litigation that goes into bringing this foreclosure to final judgment. So now the investor is sitting there with a copy of the LP. They've written on the copy of the LP the amount of money that's owed in the complaint. And remember, this is only a snapshot, so it's going to go up. And now you're just going to look and see what the value of the property is. Whether you have access to MLS, Zillow, one of those automated value evaluation models, or whether you know based on the fact that you're in this market and you see properties around all the time. I remember back in the day, if we're talking about a 3-bedroom, 1-bath in West Hollywood, Boulevard Heights, I could tell you what it was worth because they're all the same. They're all 1,100 square feet. Each bedroom is 10 by 10. It's an eat-in kitchen, and it looks like a rectangle. So they're all priced about the same. So if you're that astute of an investor, you'll be able to do that also. But in light of the fact that you may not, you got to come up with a value, and then you take the value and you subtract it away from the amount that's owed, and you'll see whether or not you were over encumbered or not. If you are over encumbered, this moves to the next stack because it's going to be an opportunity that you need to explore further. The next thing that you do, you get in your car and you take a ride to the house and you look around. I'm not suggesting that Google Map photos are not going to do justice, but there's more things that you need to look at and you need to take in as an investor other than just a snapshot of the photo of the house. Drive by the house. You can park in front or just a couple of houses down. The people that are in foreclosure, they know they're in foreclosure. Get out of the car and stand in the middle of the street and look around. And look around at the neighborhood as well as the subject property. And the reason you're doing this is because you want to try to get an idea what this neighborhood is like. Because in order for this thing to fly, your offer is going to have to be on the very low end of the pricing spectrum in order to make this thing work for you as an investor. So you have to look around the surrounding neighborhood and make sure that the neighborhood itself is poor enough that the lender is going to consider a low enough offer in order for the investor to make some money. And if it is, if all these things line up so far, knock on the door. Now, if you knock on the door and nobody answers, I need you to have a leave behind. And we'll be talking about leave behinds a little bit later in the training. With that said, I'm ready for the next slide.